The Asian American Pacific Islander Nurses Association of Nevada presents Healthy Mondays with Apina of Nevada. Start the week healthy and right with interesting conversations on living a healthy lifestyle. And now, your Healthy Mondays host, Dr. Mary Faye Axon Armstrong.
Aloha! Good evening. Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. Maraming salamat po sa patuloy niyong pagtangkilik sa aming programa, Healthy Monday with Apina of Nevada. I'm yours truly, Dr. Mary Faye Axon Armstrong, founding president of Apina of Nevada and professor at Roseman University College of Nursing. Tonight, every night is special. Every Monday is special with Healthy Mondays. I have a good friend and nursing colleague who will be my co-host, Dr. Ray Serapica, President-elect of Apina of Nevada and professor at UNLV School of Nursing.
Good evening po, magandang gabi, and again, we're here in Healthy Mondays with Dr. Mary Faye Axon Armstrong, and we have a very special guest tonight.
Yes, our special guest will bring us great insight about the nurses' role in the COVID-19 global pandemic and bring to light other improvement and initiative in our healthcare system in Nevada and beyond. So Dr. Mary Bonmas is the current president of Nevada Nurse Association. She is the Associate Dean for Faculty Affairs and Associate Professor in Residence at UNLV School of Nursing. Welcome, Dr. Bonmas, to Healthy Mondays.
Thank you very much. Please call me Mary, and I'm going to do Ray and Mary Faye, if that's all right with you also.
Okay, Mary and Ray and Mary Faye. Okay, to our listeners out there, we're going to share some insights about how we as frontliners and healthcare providers can contribute to minimizing the COVID-19 global pandemic. As you all know, there's a lot of frontliners and nurses traveling around United States and even nurses from China, other countries who are giving help to each other, which is good. This is I think the divine purpose for this global pandemic to wake us up and say that anything that's happening in another country can affect the other countries. And I've always reinstated this since I teach at Uganda Christian University, and I know that what's happening there is affecting us as well. So tonight, Dr. Mary is going to share with us another aspect of an initiative that Nevada Nurse Association is sharing. I know that last May, I was invited to attend a meeting with maybe you can share with them that meeting that I attended, and you were one of the speakers, Mary, with that meeting.
I'm not 100% sure of which meeting, unless you're talking about this recent, just last month.
Yes, you know what?
Oh, okay, very good. I'm trying to think back. These last few months have been like a year. So yes, Mayor Faye attended a meeting that we did a live webinar sponsored by the Southern Alliance of Nurses out of the University of Nevada in Las Vegas, out of UNLV School of Nursing. And what we did is we brought together three leaders, nurse leaders in the state. Was Kathy Denauer, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the State Board of Nursing, and Marissa Brown, who is the Clinical Director at the Nevada Hospital Association, and myself serving as the President of the Nevada Nurses Association. And in this webinar, we went over what the compact is and the advantages to nurses, the advantages to the healthcare systems in Nevada, and most importantly, the advantages to our patients or the citizens of Nevada.
Yes, and I also shared it when we had our faculty meeting here at Roseman. I shared it with my co-faculty during our meeting. And surprisingly, not all of them know about what it is. And so here we are, and I thought we need to have Mary come and talk about it. And I think it's not only the frontliners and healthcare providers that need to know about it, because it is going to affect everybody.
That's correct, Mary Faye, and we, within the next week or so, we will also have the link on the Nevada Nurses Association's homepage for that exact reason. Not everybody knows about the compact, or they might have heard about it and thought, whatever, or is buying into any of the myths that are circulating around. But I think this recent pandemic that we're still in brings to light the need for such a multi-state licensure, which is basically what the nursing compact is.
And I was really encouraged and surprised to see that we are surrounded by states who have the nursing compact licensure. And I think during that meeting, somebody mentioned that California, the state of California, had submitted their proposal, but the voting, imagine, just missed one vote. And I know California would persist. And when I was in Hawaii, I know that every time California does something with healthcare or whatever, Hawaii always follow, and all the other states follow. So maybe this would be the time that maybe we can show our listeners out there the map that actually is shown during the meeting.
Sure. Currently, this is the map of the United States, obviously with our territories and disconnected states of Hawaii and Alaska. And what it shows in the darker color are the compact states. There are 34 current states that are part of the compact. And as you notice, to our northeast, to our direct east, and to our southeast, we have Idaho, Utah, and Arizona, which are our surrounding states on the east and north and southeast sides that are compact states. Now, California, again, had the legislation proposed and it lost by one vote. And California has a very large population of nurses, and to come to consensus is very difficult, but one vote, we're getting much closer. So basically, these are the states that are involved with the compact, and how we fit in as having our eastern, northeastern, and southeastern borders with our sister states, which are compact states.
And I know during the meeting you mentioned about call for action. Maybe you can, well, the first thing is maybe we can go back and have you share with us your role as the president of the Nevada Nurse Association and your current position related to the NCL.
Sure. I'm as president, I lead our board of directors and make visits across the state, because the Nevada Nurses Association is an organization of nurses for nurses. We're older than 90 years, not me, close, but not me, but we're older than 90 years old. And we primarily are involved in educating, promoting professional practice, and also we are involved in any legislative issues that are relative to us as nurses that impact healthcare and health of the citizens of Nevada.
Wow, you have a very powerful position out there for on behalf of the Nevada Nurse Association.
Well, thank you, but really it's the nurses that do the work. I'm just at some point the spokesperson for the organization, but it is an organization of people that are totally vested in health and healthcare for the citizens. And I might add that anyone interested in our organization can freely browse our website at nvnurses.org and look around. We have continuing education, and we're trying to keep up with the latest in COVID information. It seems to change almost daily as far as what we know about this horrendous pandemic, but we're trying to keep it as up to date as possible. Now, you had asked about our current position related to the Nursing Compact licensure, and the Nevada Nurses Association is in full support of the Nursing Compact licensure. And we are joined with the Nevada State Board of Nursing and with the Nevada Hospital Association. And that's statewide, et cetera. But nationwide, the NLN, the National League for Nursing, also supports the licensure of the compact, as does the American Association of Colleges of Nursing and multiple multiple other national organizations are in support. And there is evidence that this novel compact does work. It's been in effect for over 18 years. And then recently it was transformed, if you will. So it took out any of the barriers that once existed. So, and one of those barriers was criminal background checks, which we have in Nevada, but might not have been with all the compact states. Now it is a requirement for all states belonging to the compact to have the criminal background checked. And that was one of the major barriers in the past of us not joining. So just to back up just a smidge, what exactly is the Nurse Compact Act might be something that we should talk about first. And I've used the term before, this is a multi-state license. It's a nurse's license that allows nurses to, with this multi-state license, to practice physically, telephonically, or electronically from their home state across to other states belonging to the compact. And as the map showed before, that would mean that a nurse working from Nevada could also work in Idaho, could also work in Utah or Arizona. And that could be telehealth nursing, or it could be a physical nursing up in some of our rural areas. Someone who is not employed could perhaps cross state line and go over to Utah. I'm thinking of Elko being so close to Utah, and practice there and maybe do a commute back and forth. And vice versa. When our rural communities and our underserved communities are short of nursing, we can have other nurses come in to fill the gap when a gap is indeed needed. So that's basically what the compact is. It allows a nurse to practice with one license in any of the compact states.
So I remember coming from Hawaii before I came over to relocate here, that I had to go through all the process. I had to go and get my fingerprints. I have to get my what you're saying about the FBI, the federal clearance, the civil clearance, and all that. So that would still be. I'm hearing what you were saying earlier, that would still be required.
Well, actually, how it works is you would have to, for your multi-state license, you would have to have a background check, and that would be done in your home state. So it's one license, you follow your home state's regulations, and if there's need for discipline, that is done by your home state. An analogy that might be helpful is the driver's license. So you and I have a driver's license in Nevada, and Ray too have a driver's license in Nevada, but we can go across the country with that driver's license. So we apply once and then reapply every however many years it is these days for our driver's license. So too with the multi-state licensure. You are issued your driver's license from the state of Nevada, and for the multi-state license, that would be issued from the state of Nevada also. So the criminal background check that Nevada requires would then serve all the states that are in the compact. But it's important to note, as just as with the driver's license, you need to know the rules of the road. Same with the multi-state license, you would need to know your practice act in your home state. You don't need to memorize all 34 practice acts from the other states that are in the compact, but you're accountable to the Nurse Practice Act and the rules in your home state. So in our case, that would be Nevada. And just as if you speed or break the laws when you're driving your car with your Nevada license, no matter where you are in the country, your license can be revoked. You can pay a penalty, you get a ticket, and your license can be revoked. So too with the license, a multi-state license, if you're not following your home state's practice act, your license can be disciplined or revoked the same way as if it was only a license in Nevada. So it's the Nurse Practice Act that of your home state that governs the rules that you follow as a practicing nurse.
And
Yes. So,
yeah.
yeah, the speed limit, and then whether you can go when it's yellow, or you can go whether, the stop on the right, before turning right. Uh, Ray, you were gonna say something.
Yes,
Sorry.
thank you, Mary and Mary Faye. Like this compact and multi-state licensure, where they were talking about it. Like I remember when I was in nursing school back in North Carolina, and we had to go to South Carolina to do our clinicals. But then there was an incident where the clinical faculty did not have the South Carolina license to supervise us. So that's when I became aware of this compact and multi-state licensure. They called it even reciprocity at that time. Even South Carolina and North Carolina, they don't even have a reciprocity. So this is a good thing for nurses when Mary Faye talk about the pandemic and state of emergency. The practice of healthcare and caring should not be defined by those traditional boundaries like lines on a map, like the Mary was saying, but rather driven by the patient care and the patient needs rather. So this is something that we probably need to invest on as nurses. And Mary, why would let's say even our student nurses need to know this information, how it's going to impact their practice in the near future.
Well, that's a good point, Ray. They need to know, first of all, the Practice Act. So when they graduate and come out of school and apply for the job, they need to know that they work under a law, under a Practice Act, and they need to be aware of that. And most programs, accredited programs, have something about the Nurse Practice Act in their curriculum. And when that nurse goes out, and we here in Southern Nevada, we have students coming from multiple areas. So we would hope all of our graduates would stay in Nevada, but they don't necessarily. They may start working in Nevada and then for some reason need to go to Utah or to Arizona or to Idaho and hopefully one day California and work there. So they wouldn't have to reapply. If we became a member of the compact, they wouldn't have to reapply. They could seamlessly go across the state line where there is a compact state. So again, California bill was defeated, but that'll come up again next year. And hopefully that will look a little bit different when that one vote is in favor versus against. And I might add, currently, like I think it was March 12th, our governor here in Nevada declared a state of emergency. And there was a provision in the state of emergency that said, in effect, kind of conceptually made us a compact state, because for the period of the emergency, which I believe was supposed to be for 90 days and then might be extended because it might be ending soon. But what it said in there was a section that said healthcare workers from another state can come into Nevada as needed. They'd have to meet the licensure requirements, but they could be vetted within 2 days. So having that vetting process out of the way in an emergency, such as, okay, with October 1, we were fortunate among that disaster to not have it carry on. So our hospitals were able to handle the initial onslaught of patients with the gunshot wounds and other trauma, and we were able to get them into surgeries with our various hospitals. In a situation that would have lasted longer and our nurses became fatigued, where would we get the nurses to take their place? As we saw with COVID-19, many of our nurses who were indeed in the units caring for the COVID patients became fatigued, and we fortunately have moved past our peak so that we continue to decline in our numbers. But what if we have a shortage of nurses as it is, but what if in that emergency, those nurses couldn't come and help out as nurses want to. As Mayor Fay said earlier on, nurses moved across the state. Nurses moved across the world to help others in need during this virus. We have nurses from Southern Nevada that went to New York at their own expense and went out to help because they were hit very, very hard. And we were fortunate. And I think the governor's action to close the state basically on March 12th, even the day before the country state of emergency was declared, and closing our casinos, as much as that hurt, and it did hurt from every aspect, economically to entertainment wise to employment wise, still made a difference because relatively we have, I don't know what the last number I saw was, getting close to 9,000 positive cases, but under 500 deaths since the pandemic began. But getting back to the question, nursing students need to know this so that they can advocate as registered nurses when they graduate. And registered nurses need to know this so they are aware of the practice situations that might affect them.
There's one question that came up when I shared it during our faculty meeting. They were asking, is there more than one nursing compact licensure version, or this is the only version?
The current version, which kind of morphed and was called the E-Compact for a while, and it happened in 2018, where all of the compact states decided that the rules would all be the same. So there's like 11 mandatory things that a nurse in a compact state must have, and they're uniform, and that happened. So there's really only one nurse license compact currently for RNs and LPNs. There is a compact for APRNs, but we're not quite there yet. So moving in sequential manner, we'd like to get the RN compact passed, and that would include our LPNs also. And then the APRNs, we could advocate for them at a later time. I don't have the data on the APRN compact. I believe I know there's not 34 states that have it, but it's a newer thing that's coming. But it's something that we need to look at critically, especially when it comes to prescription. And that's where they're going to meet some barriers, because while Nevadan APRNs have autonomous practice, it's not true across the other countries for the other states for APRNs. So that's a long way off. But the current RN and including LPN Nurse Licensure Compact, or NLC, is the only one that there is following these 11 uniform requirements that nurses that practice have to follow, and we have to meet those requirements so that there's a continuity among the compact states and consistency.
Maybe at this point we can show the map again, because I noticed that one of the states, I think it's Pennsylvania, they have a partial.
It might be Pennsylvania, but I believe New Jersey also has the partial, and I'm not 100% sure on the regulations in New Jersey, but they've kind of adapted, so they've somehow they're in somewhat of an outlier but exception. So anyone who would want to practice in New Jersey, and if we were a compact state, would have to make sure that they understand what that exception is. Because on most maps that you will see in most, if you go to, say, the national state boards of nursing. We have our Nevada State Board of Nursing, but there is a larger national state board of nursing. They have all the facts listed, and I do know that they explain that New Jersey exception on their webpage.
Yes, I didn't. I looked at it and I don't remember specifically what was the limitation, but because of that question during our meeting, then I looked, and yeah, there's only one nursing compact licensure version, but then each state could do a limitation, or That's why they call it special.
Right. And so that, and New Jersey is the only one. So anytime you're on the National State Board of Nursing website, you'll see New Jersey will have an asterisk and it'll explain exactly what that is. Since I don't plan to go to New Jersey anytime soon, I don't even remember what it was. I do remember seeing it though, and I do know that it is New Jersey with that exception.
So Mary, when somebody wants to apply for a compact licensure or a multi-state compact, is it based on the nurse primary state of residence, or is it based on and I know you can clarify this, or somebody like who owns a property somewhere out of state, will that be the basis of the compact licensure?
Right. And basically how it works, well, first of all, this is a legislative issue. And that's one of the things that we're working with it with the State Board of Nursing, with the other organizations, Hospital Association, and our NNA Association, and hope the Philippine Nurses Association in Nevada also joins with us, is we have to get the legislation through. So the lobbyists from those three organizations that I mentioned, and the State Board, NNA, and the Hospital Association are working together with the Health Committee, I believe is going to bring the bill forward in the legislative session in 2021. So we're starting now. But kind of to answer Ray's question, here's basically how it works. So a nurse identifies their state of residency. So if you're going to identify Nevada as your state of residency, that is the practice act that you practice under and held accountable to. But if you want to move to Arizona and declare Arizona your state of residency, you have to do that. Then your primary holder of your license is Arizona. And again, the nurse has to meet 11 uniform requirements across all the compact states. This is graduating from an accredited college or institution, proficiency in English, able to pass the criminal background check, and then there's several others. But the home state where you declare is your home state is the rules of the road, if you will, or the practice acts that you follow. And that is where, God forbid, you would be disciplined if there was an incident. And so what happens is the compact states have a mechanism of communicating so that if you're in your home state is Arizona, but you're working in Southern Nevada, and there's a discrepancy, that you're held accountable still to the laws in your state. So that would be your discipline would happen in your home state. It would be communicated between the states. Any pending actions or any allegations are mitigated in your home state.
I haven't looked into it about now that you mentioned about the 11 implications. I'm zeroing in the continuing education because I know Hawaii just started requiring all of their healthcare providers, RNs, LPNs, APRNs, with completing 30 continuing education credits in order to renew their license. With the implication that if you already have a certification, as long as your specialty certification is still active, then you don't have to meet the 30 CEUs because you already have fulfilled that when you're getting your certification. So I think that would be one question that a lot of nurses would ask, like if one state doesn't require it.
And that's absolutely a great question. So let's use Nevada and Washington, D.C. and Hawaii, because I have a license in the District of Columbia and you have one in Hawaii, but we both have one in Nevada, as does Ray. So in Nevada, we're required to have 30 contact hours and our 2-year renewal period. And so if our home state is Nevada, we have 30 continuing hours of education. So if Hawaii has 30, it's a wash because your home state requires the 30. But I have a license that I just renewed yesterday in Washington, D.C. They had to close the state renewal agency during the pandemic, but it opened yesterday and I went on and renewed. So, and their requirement is 24 continuing hours of education. Well, I happen to have 45 because I knew my Nevada one was coming up. So, and as nurses, most of us have more than is required, especially if we're educators because we go to conferences, etc. But I had to have 30 for Nevada, even though I only needed 24 in DC. So whatever your home state is, what their requirement is for continuing education, that's what you're accountable for. So I can't imagine why, but if somebody just didn't want to do continuing education for whatever reason, they could go to Washington, D.C. and declare that as their home state. I imagine you would have to um, uh, have some reason to do that as far as your residency or living there. But again, I live in Nevada and I'm allowed to have a license in DC, and many people have many licenses. One of the problems is when it comes to renewal, you have to pay for the license each time. Whereas on the compact, you would renew, for our case, we would, if Nevada is our home state, we would renew in Nevada only. Now, unfortunately, the District of Columbia is not a compact state. So even if Nevada becomes one, DC is not a compact. So I'd still have to pay that fee. And that's, again, one of the disadvantages or advantages, depending on how you look at it. But also in DC, there's a criminal background check required with each renewal, and they just add that cost to your licensing renewal fee. So yeah, that's a great question about continuing ed, but it is a home state that implies or regulates your continuing education.
So I'm in the same situation because if Hawaii is not, I still have to renew my Hawaii.
Yes. So, and it, you know, it does get costly, and that's again a disadvantage. Let's say we have military and our military spouses happen to be a nurse. Whether the military member is a male or female, the spouse may be a nurse. And if they travel with their military spouse and they want to get a job other than at the VA or on a military base, they have to get a license in that state. That gets very costly. And I'm not sure how familiar you are with the military, but they are not high payers for the military member. But so that spouse of the military person would have to license in every state that the family might move to.
Wow, this is a lot of wealth of information that we're giving to all our listeners out there. And I hope that you pick up a few that you can share with other people who are not able to listen to us tonight. One last question. Time flies when we're having fun. So how can Asian American Pacific Islanders Association of Nevada can partner with NNA and also with State Board of Nursing and the Nevada Nurses Hospital Association in having Nevada as an NCF?
This is a great question and a great way to end. So informing your members, as we're doing right here, is really important. Now, there may be disadvantages. We should collaborate with all factions that would be affected by this, and this includes our union members and our union committees that represent nurses, so that we talk together and look at the pros and the cons and then decide what is best for the citizens of Nevada, for the nurses of Nevada, and for the healthcare systems of Nevada. So we need to look at and have respectful conversations inclusive of everyone, so that, and with the Asian American Pacific Islanders in Nevada, I would hope that your members would become informed and knowing the benefits, which I believe outweigh the risk involved, especially given the 18-year history of the compact in place, that you would be writing a letter of support, that you would tell your Philippine colleagues about this, that you would tell your Philippine families who vote about how this is going to impact you as a nurse and them as a patient, and generally just a consumer. So having your members informed and then gathering their support and a letter of support when it comes time to go before the legislature is going to be extremely important. So we welcome your support, but we want all of our nurses to be informed. And that's what we're doing right here. So again, I thank you for inviting me to discuss this important issue that faces Nevada nurses.
Thank you, Mary, for being our special guest tonight. And we will make sure, Ray and I will make sure that we include it in our next executive committee meeting for our Alpena of Nevada. I actually already mentioned it in our last meeting last May.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you to your entire organization for disseminating the news that's informative to Nevada nurses.
I also wanted to thank Ray for being my co-host tonight. And also, of course, always PHLV Radio for partnering with us to bring all this important information to our community, not only to Nevada, but also beyond. Because this is going to be a podcast and it's going to be in iTunes, also Spotify, and also iHeartRadio, and then now with Amazon TV. And you can watch that on your television set. So, mga kababayan, our listeners out there, remember, every Monday is a healthy Monday. Aloha.
Bye.
The Asian American Pacific Islander Nurses Association of Nevada has just brought you Healthy Mondays with Alpena of Nevada.